imposes an obligation on the Commission to ensure that those who are eligible to stand for election do stand and exercise their rights. But here is the often quoted passage from this case, which really encompasses everything I'd like to say by way of introduction. Universal adult suffrage on a common voter's roll is one of the foundational values of our entire constitutional order. That's paragraph 17. The achievement of the franchise has historically been important both for the acquisition of the rights of full and effective citizenship by all South Africans, regardless of race, and for the accomplishment of an all-embracing nationhood. The universality of the franchise is important not only for nationhood and democracy. The vote of each and every citizen is a badge of dignity and personhood. Quite literally, it says that everybody counts. In a country of great disparities of wealth and power, it declares that whoever we are, whether rich or poor, exalted or disgraced, we all belong to the same democratic South African nation. That our destinies are intertwined in a single interactive polity. Rights may not be limited without justification, and legislation dealing with the franchise must be interpreted in favor of enfranchisement rather than disenfranchisement. Contained there is...
So I just want to warn you...
Yes, I am aware the 10 minutes is up.
Now.
Thank you.
You may start expecting questions from the
members. As God pleases, my Lord. I'm indebted to the court for the reminder.
Sure.
Now, the reminder came in time because, as I say, that quotation encapsulates everything I want to say in terms of setting the canvas about this case. Whether you are rich or poor, exalted by everyone or the media, or disgraced by them, we all belong to the same democratic South African nation. And we must favor enfranchisement rather than disenfranchisement, and banishment and separating people away. And there's no better case, again, to demonstrate that than the case of August, because they were dealing with prisoners convicted and sentenced in the conventional way, just as what Mr. Zuma is being accused of. But the court said, no, despite whatever those people might have done, they might have been rapists or whatever, but you can take away their freedom of movement, but you cannot take away their rights in terms of Section 19. So, against that background, I will deal very briefly with the issue of ultravirus. This is a very important issue that goes into interpretation, of course, as this case is really all about, but it also goes to some of the foundational values of our democracy. The supremacy of the Constitution and the separation of powers. It also goes to the multi-party democracy, all the values that are enshrined in Section 1 of the Constitution, as well as the rights to human dignity, as was said in paragraph 17 of August, that the right to vote is a badge of dignity, particularly for those who were disenfranchised by apartheid. Now, what we're saying under this section, esteemed members of the panel, is this. Until now, and this case is important for this, until now, the question as to whether who must implement Section 47 has not been asked, and has certainly not been answered. There was an assumption that the Commission is the agency or organ that must administer that. But that's how the law develops. We have assumptions until such time that the issue has been raised. And the issue we're raising is the following. There is, in terms of the rule of law, because we know ultra vires is the old Latin term for what we now call the principle of legality or rationality and so on. Sometimes it's called authority, sometimes it's called jurisdiction. It doesn't matter what the term is. But the concept is the following. And that concept was captured in the leading cases of Fairchild, pharmaceutical, and so on. That public officials...
Sorry, Mr. Mpofu, before you proceed, I think that we need to contextualize Section 47.
Yes,
it's in the following context.
Right.
Mr. Zuma, the former president of the Republic of South Africa, is among the list of candidates that was submitted by the MK party on the 8th of March 2024. So far, so good. And then there was an objection submitted to the IEC on the 26th, 27th of March 2024 by two people. Well, it's the second respondent and the third respondent. The third respondent has since distanced himself from the objection. So we are now remaining with the objection of Dr. Matsapula.
Correct.
And it is on the basis of that objection that the IEC made a decision. That's where we are now. Now, the question is whether or not the IEC, in relying on Section 47, was correct. So it's about the interpretation of Section 47, whether it excludes or it includes Mr. Zuma. That's the whole case. That's the whole thing, issue about this case.
No, my lord.
So it's about the interpretation of Section 47.
Yes, no, it is. Well, that part is correct, my lord.
Yes.
It is about the interpretation of Section 47.
Yes.
But the point I was making, my lord, is that it's not about the what I call the merits in our heads, which is whether Mr. Zuma is excluded or included only. It's about the preliminary points that I'm raising.
Yes.
Whether, in the first place, the administration, for lack of a better word, of Section 47 lies in the hands of the IEC.
Okay.
That's
So
the issue.
we at this stage, we are at ultra vires
That's
point,
right.
whether or not the IEC had authority to do what it did. That's whole thing about. That's whole debate about jurisdiction, ultra vires authority. Yes. So that's where we are now.
Absolutely.
In relation to Section 47.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And that's why I said...
Now, your argument is the following. IEC does not have authority. That authority belongs to the National Assembly or Parliament.
Yes.
Is it well?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Sure.
Thank you, my lord. So, my lord, and we say this for the following reasons. If you look at where Section 47 is located
Yes.
in the constitutional scheme, it's in Chapter 4. Chapter 4 of the Constitution is headed Parliament. The Parliament meaning the National Assembly and the NCOP. That's what we call Parliament in South Africa. And then the heading to Section 47 says membership. And so it deals with the membership of the National Assembly. And as if that's not enough, this section itself makes it clear what it deals with. It says, it starts by, crucially, starts by reminding us of Section 19. It says, every citizen who is qualified to vote for the National Assembly is eligible to be a member of the assembly. Very important. You know, how a statute is framed. A statute is basically a way of communicating. It's a National Assembly writing us a letter as a nation. So they start by reminding us of Section 19, that every citizen, including Mr. Zuma, who is qualified to vote for the National Assembly, is eligible to be a member of the Assembly. And then it says, except. Now that formulation already tells you something. We try to include everyone, and then but there are exceptions. So already that is the ethos of this, that we must not start by excluding, as the IEC seeks to do. We start by including, and then we apply the exceptions. And then this is the crucial part. It says, except, we go to E. Anyone who, after this section took effect, there's no problem with that, is convicted of an offense, that's the first thing. And, that word and is important, not all. And sentenced to more than 12 months imprisonment without the option of a fine, as your Lordship said, so far so good. Either in the Republic or outside of the Republic and so on. And then, but, again, so there's another exception within the exception. But, it says, or is what we call a proviso now. But no one may be regarded as having been sentenced until an appeal against the conviction or sentence has been determined, or until the time of the appeal has expired. A disqualification under this paragraph ends 5 years after the sentence is completed. So we'll come to the bits and pieces of that section. The point we're making now is simply this. The IEC does not have, or must show this court, in terms of the factual case, the IEC must tell this court where it gets the authority to implement Section 47. And the answer is nowhere. And the quotation I put there from Baxter is very important. You don't say, when you apply the rule of law, well, we can do everything that we are not prohibited from doing. No, it doesn't work like that. It says we can only do those things that we are authorized by law to do. So if you are doing something as a public official, if someone wakes you up and says, where did you get the authority for this? You must be able to wake up and say, section this and section that and section that. And then we'll leave you alone. But if you are unable to point to any authority that empowers you to do something, then it's ipso facto ultra vires. Now, so the only authority, the only power of the IEC, my Lord, is found in section 190 of the Constitution. So it cannot do anything outside of that. It's a creature of statute. You can't just wake up and do what you want. So, and 190 says the Electoral Commission must manage elections. I'll use shorthand to save time. Manage elections, we all know that. Ensure that those elections are free and fair, we all know that. Declare the results of those elections, we all know that. And that's it. And then it says at 92, which is the catch-all phrase, which maybe they will rely on. The Electoral Commission has the additional powers and functions prescribed by national legislation. So in other words, the IEC only has the powers prescribed in section 190, they manage elections and so on and so on, or they would get those powers from legislation. Now let's go to the applicable legislation.
Mr.
I'm sorry.
Mpofu, I'm sorry, but before we go to the applicable legislation, when we're interpreting or giving content to the powers of the IEC in the context of elections for the National Assembly, do we not also have to look for interpretation purposes at section 47(2)?
Yes, we'll come to that.
You're getting there?
Yes, we definitely will come to that. But you see, it's said in when the Constitution, my lady, disenfranchises somebody, it will not do it by silence, I can assure you. That's what he said in August. It will.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I just wanted to finish because my question had two parts, and
Right.
it's fair to put the whole thing because you probably do
Sorry,
the whole thing.
yes, ma'am.
And it relates almost directly to disenfranchisement, because if you say, if this court, for example, were to find that the power lies not with the IEC but with the National Assembly to exclude a person in terms of 47(1)(e), is that not then a sort of disenfranchisement by stealth? Because then the person, as a voter, I think, oh, my person is a candidate, that means my person qualifies because the decision has been made to allow my person to be a candidate, and then I vote for that person, and then the National Assembly says, no, in terms of section 47(1)(e), you are disqualified. So then I voted for this person, but my vote doesn't count because now after the fact, the National Assembly is disqualifying me.
That is exactly what happens every day. That's what should happen. Let me explain.
Should happen.
Yes, that's what should happen.
Okay.
Because the National Assembly is entrusted with the power to manage its own affairs in terms of Section 57 of the Constitution, right? One of its affairs is to determine who is a member and who is not a member. And that power is, by separation of powers, circumscribed to the National Assembly. The judiciary cannot get into it, the executive cannot get into it, right? Let alone the IEC, some independent institution, which is not even one of those. It is put into the four corners of Section 57 of the Constitution as a function of the National Assembly. Now let's come to your specific example. What you've just described is actually what happens in practice. Because I vote for what your ladyship calls my person. If the IEC allows my person to be on the list now, right? That was on the 28th of March. And then in April, that person is sentenced to 10 years. What must happen? The IEC has got nothing to do with it. The National Assembly will deal with that issue because the person was sentenced, let's say, on the 5th of May. On the 29th of May, when the people are being sworn in managing its affairs, the National Assembly will then say, no, Mr. My person, you are not eligible to be a member of the National Assembly. But it's even worse, my lady. Forget about elections. In 2028, my person gets sentenced to 20 years. The National Assembly, not the IEC, will then say, Mr. Person, you have now been sentenced last week, you can no longer be a member, and so on and so on. Right until the end of that, the IEC does not enter anywhere in this. Right. So, that's the whole issue. Section 57 must be given content. And also Section 48 of the Constitution. Section 48 of the Constitution says that members in reality become members once they are sworn in. Right? Just like we all become whatever we are as once we're sworn in. Cabinet Minister, President, whatever. So, the reality, that's why the Americans came with this concept of what they call a president-elect. So until you have been sworn in, you are a president-elect or you are an MP-elect, if you like. Right? You are not a president, you are not a member of the National Assembly, per se. You're just a person who has been voted in. That is why Rule 13 of the rules of the National Assembly says that at its first sitting, and you'll find that expression in so many places in the Constitution, the first sitting of the National Assembly is the one that is regulated. Why is it regulated? Because it's the special place where all these questions are dealt with. That meeting is chaired deliberately by the Chief Justice. Why? Because nobody is a member, there's no speaker, there's no president, there's nothing. We are still in the lacuna of the elections. That's what the Chief Justice presides over that meeting, my lady. until what happens? Until the speaker is elected. That's the end. The Chief Justice even has the power to determine when that meeting will take place. The minute people have been sworn in, if the Chief Justice went there and said, no, you must have a meeting next week, they'll say, what's wrong with you? And the reason for that is because those people, that is how the National Assembly manages its membership system. Not just in that first sitting, but throughout the 5 years. Where the IEC comes into this is nowhere. The IEC, I'm sorry.
Mr. Mpofu, within the scheme of things that you have just outlined,
Yes.
then how does IEC feature
Yes.
with reference to section 27? Because I think that there must be a start before you go to the National Assembly. We must have started somewhere.
Yes. Okay.
So maybe one might say your argument it puts the cart before the horse, because we need to start somewhere.
Correct.
As you have correctly pointed out, that in terms of section 190, the IEC is a body that is tasked with managing and managing and conducting elections. So that is their function.
Yes.
So that function obviously must include the entire section 27 submission of list.
Yes.
Because I'll tell you why I'm saying so. We have got section 47 of the Constitution. Sorry, section 46 of the Constitution. That section says the National Assembly is composed of no fewer than 350 and no more than 400 men and women elected as members in terms of the electoral system that is prescribed by the national legislation. That national legislation, you know that it's an electoral act. Okay. Now, and that electoral system is based on the national common voters roll. Now, in other words, the members of National Assembly are sourced from the candidate list. Is that not so?
Yes, my lord, that is so.
Yes. But is it not where the screening should take place when that list is submitted? Because once the screening has taken place, then those people, if they are elected, they go to the National Assembly.
No, they don't necessarily, my lord. That's what I was explaining to Justice Yakub. Those people will be members of the National Assembly if at that time, at the first sitting, they qualify. And think of it like this, my lord.
Well, let's say for argument's sake, they get 20 or 20, so
Or 200.
well, 200. Those 200 will go to the national parliament. Is that not so? Now it will be for the National Assembly now to do its function in terms of section.
That's the point. That's the point I'm making.
Yes.
The point I'm making is this: you cannot say those. I think the number I stand corrected, but I'm told that the number is around 15,000. There are about 15,000 people right now who have been who are on the candidate lists of various parties, various levels. Right now, those 15,000 people are not members of Parliament. They're not members of the National Assembly. They are nothing. Members, Section 47, which deals with membership of the National Assembly, kicks in once those people are elected. That's why Section 19(1)(3)(b) says every person has a right to stand for elections, and if elected, to hold office. That bridge, or the election, is the bridge through which your Section 19(3)(b) election rights kick in. And that's the simple point we're making, my lord, is that you cannot then have the IEC exceeding its powers. And your Lordship, I thought your Lordship was going to section 30, but we can start at section 30.
That's where I want to go.
Yes, yes. Can I just finish this thought and then I'll hear Justice Mudiwa. The answer to this, to what we're saying, is that we've said 191 is out. 192 says that you may also get power from legislation. So where in this instance do they get their power? It is anticipating the question from Justice Mudiwa. It is section 30 bracket 1, right? Section 30 bracket 1 says that any person, including the chief electoral officer, may object to the nomination of a candidate on the following grounds: that the candidate is not qualified to stand in the election. Not the candidate is not qualified to be a member of the National Assembly, because that's not their province,
Yes.
so to speak. Sorry, Justice Peter, thank you for allowing me to finish that thought.
I wanted to ask you, Mr. Mpofu, if the powers of the Commission to screen from the list whether a candidate qualifies, and I want to use the word from this section, qualifies
To stand in the election.
no, to be appointed into office, not to stand for the election. So it's the list.
Yes.
So let's look at section 31A, right?
Yes, that's the one I just read.
It says the objection relates to qualification to
In
stand
the election.
in the elections, right? And then the Commission has the administrative authority to screen that list, to determine whether anyone is qualified to stand in the election.
Normally, maybe they do have that power, but that's not the power that brings us here today. The power that brings us here today is the power that arises from the power of the IEC to determine an objection, right?
Yes.
So they did not exercise the power that they have. As you see, there it says any person, including the chief electoral officer, may object. They didn't. So that means, that's another thing that's wrong with this picture, by the way. That means that they waited for an objection,
Yeah.
screened, not the candidate, screened, if you want, the objection. And then what I'm saying is that in doing so, they could only have exercised the power defined in section 31A of the objection itself would be on the grounds that the candidate is not qualified to stand in the election.
Yes, but they didn't they exercise their power in terms of section 33, because they made a decision on the objection.
Yes, but that's what brings us here. We're here to appeal the decision on the objection. That's why we're here today, is to appeal. They made the decision in 33 and then we're appealing. We can only appeal here in this court.
Yes, and hence my question to you, doesn't their authority arise from that section? You said they have no authority to make the determination that they made. And my question to you is that doesn't their authority arise from section 33?
Okay.
Because that's why we're here.
My lady, you can't, the law doesn't work like that. You can only entertain an objection in the square of what the law says you can entertain.
Within the four corners of the act.
Absolutely. So they couldn't come and say, we want to object to this candidate, we saw them smoking daha. You can't. You have to, even if that's wrong to be an MP, they only have 3 grounds circumscribed by the law. A, that the candidate is qualified to not stand in the election. B, that there's no prescribed acceptance nomination signed by this candidate. And C, there's no prescribed undertaking signed by the candidate. That's all. They have no other power. This is not a court of law. They have no inherent power. They only have the power that is circumscribed by the law, by Parliament, right? So, of course, I can object and say, no, this person is too short. But that's my objection. What the IEC must do is to say, okay, let's look into the list and see whether that fits into the list. If it doesn't, it doesn't. That's the point. It's a very simple issue of the rule of law. They can't say, no, we'll just do some, we'll now screen you for membership of the National Assembly. Unless, if that was the case, the legislature would have listed it here. It would have said, the person may object to the candidate on the following ground A, that you may not be a member of the National Assembly.
But the grounds are in section 47 of the Constitution. The qualification to stand for electoral office, as the criteria is set out in section 47.
But that's
and
what
then
we're
in
busy-
terms of section 30, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act, the IEC has the power to then determine whether that criteria has been met.
No. The IEC has no, that's what we're busy discussing. The IEC has no power, unless someone is going to tell me where that power comes from, to determine
Sorry, Mr.
the membership
There
of
is something I don't understand now.
the National Assembly.
Hang on.
Yes.
So it will seem to me that you are reading section 30, subsection 1A in isolation, because all that it says that it gives you the basis upon which an objection can be based.
Yes.
A candidate is not qualified to stand
And in the
in the
election.
election, but it doesn't tell us what is it that will render a candidate not being qualified to stand in the election. That statement or that explanation or that ground we find in section 47 of the Constitution.
No.
You can't, Mr. Mpofu, sorry, you can't read section 31A in isolation, because section 31 in isolation doesn't provide the meat to the skeleton. All that it gives you the skeleton. It says, this is the basis upon which you can.
Okay, let me
Raise an
because I really
objection.
need to move to the merits. I'll just
Okay,
make one
but sure.
suggestion.
I hear you.
And stand or die.
Yes.
What we're busy discussing now is
Yes.
not the merits of the issue, it's the locus standi,
Yes.
the
The authority.
the
the
authority.
authority.
And we're saying that authority cannot be implied in the manner that the Lordship saying. That authority must be spelled out. If it's about disenfranchising human beings, it has to be. We can't say, well, therefore X is Y and Y therefore is Z. The issue is that
Well, then in relation to the qualification of the candidate.
for
where
the
does-
election.
Sorry, in relation to the qualification of candidates, in your, your suggestion is, where does the authority of the IEC start and where does it end? Because you say that when it comes to section 47 qualification, they do not
It's a matter for the National Assembly.
They do not
Yes.
have
Thank you.
authority, because it's a matter that falls within the province of the National Assembly.
Yes.
So let's see, let's deal with the extent of their powers within
Yes.
the context of.
Yes. You see, my lord, let me give you an example. There's a reason why the section starts by saying every citizen who is entitled to vote has a right to stand to be a member of the National Assembly, for example. Why? If you're not a citizen, then you are not qualified to stand in the election. Okay? That's just the clearest example. Yeah. So, but there is nowhere that says if you are not eligible to be a member next year of the National Assembly, you are not qualified to stand for the election. That's the point, and that's really the simplest way to explain it. That if we agree that the National Assembly is the body that administers its own membership throughout its 5-year term, then we have to ask the question not in this way of implying. We have to ask the simple question, where does the IEC get the power to determine the membership or non-membership of the National Assembly? And it's nowhere. Now let's move to the merits.
All right.
Assuming for a minute